Hello everyone, I am C. Ashish Sarna on behalf of GM Test Series, and today we are going to discuss the mistakes students commit in income tax. Let's start with the test series. Mr. Ravinder Gill Individual transferred land in Amravati under land pooling scheme on 6/7/2016, which was acquired by him on 9/5/2003 for rupees 2,50,000. Mr. Pawan received possession of reconstituted plot on so and so date and transferred the same on to 22/2020 for 9,50,000. Other information so and so. Friends, whenever you hear the word Amravati, Amravati is going to be the next capital of Andhra Pradesh. And any land transferred in Amravati land pooling scheme that is exempt from tax. Budget 2006-17-18, late Shri Arun Jaitley ji has specifically said that all the land transferred in Amravati under land pooling scheme will be exempt. So the answer will be nil. So that's a tricky question. We don't have to go into the facts of the case. Whenever you see the word Amravati, so that will be exempt from tax. Second question. Mr. Nikunj Jaiswal, non-resident, sold his house property situated in Bhopal to Mr. Ashwini Porwal, a non-resident. Capital gain for this transaction was 4,50,000. Mr. Nikunj also provided technical services to Muskan Resident Limited, which will be utilized for the purpose of his business in Malaysia. For these services, Nikunj charged rupees 10 lakh income of Nikunj for the financial year 1920 is. First of all, the most important thing is they both are non-resident, Nikunj and Ashwini. The property sold is situated in Bhopal. So this amount, 4,50,000, will be taxable for sure. And Nikunj and non-resident have provided us services. These services have been provided in Malaysia by a non-resident. So services provided in Malaysia, provided by a non-resident, used in Malaysia, amount accrued in Malaysia, and also we have one thing we have to assume that the amount is also paid in Malaysia. So this entire amount of rupees 10 lakh will not be chargeable in India. So the amount chargeable in India will be 4,50,000. That is a capital gain transaction only. So the answer is B. Amrish Bhatt, an actress, is employed in Kapoor films, which she is paid monthly remuneration of 2 lakh. She acts in various films produced by various producers. Remuneration for acting in such films is directly paid to Kapoor films by different producers. Rupees 2 lakh will be taxable under the head salary, other source income from profession not taxable. Whenever we see the word employed, so that is a employer-employee relationship. And also all the remuneration is paid directly to the Kapoor films and nothing is paid directly to Amrish Bhatt. So, and Amrish and Kapoor films they are paying remuneration to Amrish Bhatt. So the amount is salary only, taxable under the head salary. So the answer is A. Mr. Shanti let out his property and receives this amount: 1,30,000. Municipal value 1,30,000. Fair rent 1,10,000. Standard rent 1,20,000. Mr. Shanti took a loan acquisition from Singapore and paid interest of rupees 40,000 without deduction of TDS. Compute income from house property and municipal taxes accrued 13,000 but paid during the year is 10,000. Amount is gonna be if the rent received is more than anything else. So ignore everything and we have to take only the rent received. And also if the loan is taken from outside India, then no consideration will be deducted. So 40,000 will not be deducted from the rent received by us. In other case, if it had been received in, it would have been paid in India. A loan has been taken from an Indian bank. then a deduction would have been allowed. But now there will be no deduction to Mr. Chanti. And also the municipal taxes paid during the year shall be allowed as deduction. So from 1,32,000, we will deduct 10,000 first, 1,22,000, and 1,22,000 into 70%, that is 30% is a standard deduction. So 70% of this amount will be 85,400, I guess. So yeah, the answer will be 85,400. Next question. If order made on section 132 with respect to search seizure is contravened, there will be rigorous imprisonment of dash years and fine. Answer is 2 years. That's a theoretical question. There is no explanation required for that. On a death of a person, executor will be responsible for the disease, for the state of disease. An assessment will be made on him. Absolutely. What will be the? How will the residential status of the executor be found out? His residential status with respect to his personal income. The residential status of deceased person will be considered as residential status of executor. Residential status of a legal representative will be considered at residential status of executor. Any above options. So the answer is, so in case we have an executor who gets all the property, then for that particular year, he steps into the shoes of the deceased person, and he will be, for the deceased person, he will be assessed as if he is the one who is carrying everything on behalf of the dead person, and his residential status will be same, that is of the executor will be same as of the dead person. So the answer will be B. So for everything, he's stepping into the shoes of the dead person. So he will inherit that and also his residential status for that particular year. So the answer is going to be residential status of deceased person will be considered as residential status of the executor. Question number 7th. To become resident, which of the following conditions need to be satisfied? Stay in India for 182 days or more? Yes. And second is stay in India for 365 days or more during 4 years immediately preceding the previous year. Yes. Stay in India for 60 days or more. Yes. Now we have to choose the answer and or and or and. Friends, these three conditions has to be satisfied as per the provisions of the act. But they have used or and where they have used stay in India for 182 days or more. This is the one condition. Or stay in India for 365 days or more during the preceding year, preceding the previous year, or and third point is stay in India for 60 days or more. Here, and has to be used. First of all, this first condition is that stay in India for 182 days or more. This is the first condition. And the point 2 and point 3 has to be fulfilled simultaneously. So the answer will be B, or and or and. First of all, stay in India for 182 days or more, first condition, or stay in India for 365 days or more during the 4 years preceding the previous year, and stay in India for 60 days or more. Third and second conditions has to be fulfilled at the same time, and if these two conditions are not fulfilled, the first point can is independent of these two. If a person is staying in India for 182 days or more, he's a resident, or a person is staying in India for 365 days or more during the 4 years preceding the previous year, and in the current year, stay in India is for 60 days or more. So the answer is B. The next question is a theoretical one. Exemption amount in the case of leave salary received at time of retirement due to non-government employees is least of 3 lakh leaves. Second point, leave salary actually received dash average salary. So the answer is C, 10 months. For the purpose of offences and prosecution, which of the following individuals will be deemed to be guilty of offences committed by AOP? In if any offence has been committed, that in that case, in any case, the person who is responsible for that, only that will be held responsible for it. Only that will be deemed to be guilty of the offence in any case. So the options given are all members, no, never. Eldest most member, no. Member who's controlling the affair, relatives or partner. Why relatives? There's no condition in any of the income tax act or any other act that the relatives will of the partner or relatives of the person who has committed the offense that will be prosecuted or deemed guilty. So the answer is going to be the person who is controlling the affairs. Only that will be the responsible person for that. So the answer is C. Ms. Tanvi Chadda received shares of resulting company due to merger. Other information as follow. Cost of acquisition 40,000 when the original shares was purchased. FMV on date of merger of shares 50,000. Book value of the asset transferred to demerged company. That is the value of demerged company. That is the resulting company. Book value of assets of the resulting company is 5 lakh. Net worth of the demerged company. That is resulting company plus the company which has demerged. The combined net worth is 12 lakh. In this case, the answer will be, we have four options: 40,000, 50,000, 16,000, 667, 20,000, 833. Here, the book value of asset transferred, we have to find the cost of shares of resulting company for Tanvi. So, book value of the asset transferred, book value of the assets of the resulting company is 5 lakh divided by 12 lakh, the combined net worth of both the companies, demerge and demerging company, both. 5 lakh divided by 12 lakh into the cost of acquisition of shares, total cost of acquisition of shares. That will give the cost of acquisition shares of the resulting company for Tanvi. So the answer will be 5 lakh divided by 12 lakh into 40,000. That will be 16,667. Here, 5 lakh is the value of resulting company and 7 lakh is the value of the company which has demerged. So the combined net worth was 12 lakh. So the cost of acquisition will be 5 lakh divided by 12 lakh into 40,000. Next question. Piyush, a non-resident of India, non-resident Indian, returned to India on 12 June 2019 for permanent residing in India after a stay of about 20 years in UK. Provides the source of his various income. Seeks your opinion to know about the taxability to income tax thereon in India for the assessment 2021. First thing to be considered is that he came to India on 12th June 2019. So thereafter he was staying in India. So he stayed in India for around more than 182 days. So he is resident. And also for a resident, he qualifies the definition of that as per section 6. But after resident, he has to qualify two other conditions for a resident and ordinary resident. And if he doesn't satisfy those conditions, he will be resident but not ordinarily resident. So presuming the conditions of ordinary and resident but ordinary resident is not satisfied, because for the past 20 years he was in UK and he did not come to India and nothing is written over here. So we presume and assume that he is resident but not ordinary resident. So the income arising outside India, deemed to arise outside India, received outside India, will not be taxable in India. So the first point is income of rent of from a flat in London which was deposited in bank there. The flat was given on rent by him after his return to India since July 2019. He was this income. He was earning this income outside India, received outside India, earned outside India, accrued outside India. So this will not be taxable in India. As per Section 5(1), only income which is received, deemed to be received, accrued or arisen deemed to be accrue or arise in India is taxable in the case of resident but not ordinary resident. So the first point is rental income from flat owner which was deposited in bank there shall not be taxable in case of resident but not ordinary resident since both the accrual and the receipt of income are outside India. Dividend on shares from three German companies were also which were being collected in a bank account in London. So this income is also received outside India, earned outside India, accrued outside India. He proposes to keep the dividend of shares in London with the permission of Reserve Bank of India. So this will also be not part of income in India. He has got two sons, one of which is 12 years. Both are staying in London, has not returned to India. Each of his sons is having income of rupees 75,000 in UK and rupees 20,000 in India. For the 75,000, it is pretty clear since it is not accrued or received in India. This will be not taxable in the hands of assessee. For the minor son, 20,000 received in India. This will become part of the assessee because the provisions of clubbing of income will apply as per section 64 and reduction of 1,500 will be given to the assessee. And for the major son, no income will be clubbed in the hands of assessee. So 75,000 and 20,000 both will not be taxable in India because it was accruing to major son outside India. As per section third point, as per section 64(1)(a), all income accruing or rising to a minor child is includable in the hands of parent after providing for deduction of rupees 1,500 per child under section 1032. Accordingly, income of 20,000 accruing to a minor son is 12 years in India is includable in income of Piyush after providing deduction of rupees 1,500. Therefore, rupees 18,500 is includable in the income of Piyush. Income accruing to the minor child outside India, which is also received outside India, is not includable in the income of Piyush. It is assumed as other son who is a major son, and hence income is not includable in the income of Piyush. During the preceding year, he was non-resident. Sure, he has sold 1,000 shares which were acquired by him in British pound sterling. The sale proceeds were repatriated. The profit in terms of British pound sterling on sale of these 1,000 shares was 175% of the cost, which was at rupees 37,500, while in Indian rupees it was 50,000. So this income was earned in the previous year, in the preceding year. Repatriation of sale proceed of 1,000 shares sold in the preceding counting year when Piyush was a non-resident. Obviously, is not taxable in the assessment year 2020-21 since it is not income of Piyush for the previous year 1920. Consequently, only the income included under section. So this is the conclusion. Consequently, only the income includable under section 64(1)(a) would form part of the total income of Piyush for the assessment year 2021. Since his total income 18,500 is less than the basic exemption limit, there is no tax liability for the income tax. So the next question. This is a very logical question. Ajay is employed as senior executive of Manu Limited. Manu Limited offers right to his existing shareholders in the ratio 1:1 on Feb 15, 2020 rupees 150 per share. Ajay was offered rupees 500 shares at rupees 150, which he exercised. Other facts of the tax consequence of assessment year 2021, assuming the fair value on the date of exercise, the option is 300. A very simple question. He was given the right in the ratio 1:1. So he was having 500 shares and he was offered 1:1. There is 500 shares more for 150. And the fair market value of these shares as on date of exercise option is 300. So the solution will be the value of perquisite. This perquisite will be taxable for sure. If any all perquisites are taxable unless provided by the act that these will not be taxable, or a particular amount of exemption limit is given in that. So for the right option, there is no such exemption given. So the answer will be the value of exit will be fair market value as determined 500 into 300, 1,50,000, less amount recovered from the employees, which is total half amount. So 75,000 will be taxable. As per section 49 to A, the cost of acquisition of specified security or specific equity shares referred in section so and so shall be the fair market value. Obviously, if you're getting something of a price higher, of a which is priced higher on that particular date, that is for share price was 300, we are getting it for 150. 150 is our income. 150 into 500 is equal to 75,000. As simple as that. Next point. If Ajay is already a shareholder of 250 shares allotted in public issue, will it make any difference? So if he has already purchased in public market, the value of perquisite will not arise. There will not be any right issue for him then if he has purchased in the open market. In case of employee is a shareholder and was allotted shares in the same manner as allotted to other shareholders by the company without any concession or reduction in value, then the question of valuation perquisite would not arise. Next question. A Hindu undivided family owns a property which he has let out to a firm carrying on business. The family is a partner of a firm through its karta. No rent has been charged by the HUF from the firm for use of the premises by the firm. The assessing, however, has taxed the family on a notional income from property based on municipal valuation. Is this decision justified? This decision would have been justified if if the property had not been occupied by the relatives or the family itself. Under section 22, the annual value of the property is chargeable to tax. It had to be charged, but the situation, the case law, the case study that has been given, it is covered under exemption. However, this section specifically excludes the property occupied for the purpose of business or profession of the assessee, the profit of which are chargeable to income tax. And we have a case law also on that in CIT versus Shri Champa Lal Jeev Raj. It was observed that when the Karta of the HF is a partner in the firm in which he is representative capacity and the firm occupied a portion of house belonging to the HF, the benefit of exclusion under section 22 was available to the HF because it was kind of self-occupied property in which no notional rent will be charged. If this would have been not the situation, the annual value of the property would have been chargeable to tax under the head income from house property. But the facts of the case are covered under the exclusion as specifically stated in CIT versus Sri Champalal Jivaraj. Hence, the income from the said property will not be chargeable to tax under the head income from house property. The next question is completely a theoretical one. Can prosecution be launched for the following defaults? Almost for every default. Though, unless it's a very small default, for major defaults, we have a prosecution. Can prosecution be launched for all the defaults? Example, the following provisions with the quantum of prescribed punishment, if any. We directly go to the solution. 276C, willful failure to produce books and documents as required in section 142.1 or willful failure to comply with directions to get audited under section 142.2A, punishment up to 1 year, which may extend up to 1 year and with fine. With all the imprisonment, we have to say that it contains a portion of fine also. The other is deliberate failure to deposit a tax collected under section 206. In this, the imprisonment will not be less than 3 months and which may extend to 7 years. For the next is failure to afford facility to officer afford under section 132.1 2B. Regular imprisonment for a term which may extend to 2 years with fine. Next question. Neptune is a ship liner used in carrying passengers and cargo used by Thomas of UK. The ship carried the passengers and cargo in June 2019 from Singapore to Chennai and vice versa and collected charges thereof amounting to 200 lakhs. It left Chennai port on 15/6/2019 from its journey to Korea. No other journey to India was undertaken by any of the vessels of the company during the year ended 31/3/2020. The non-resident company has authorized Indian agent to comply with the income tax provision. You are consulted by the company to explain about the procedure as to return of income to be filed. Yes, the return has to be filed. The period with the which assessment therefore will be completed by the assessing officer. You are consulted. So if the company came to India, carried ships and passengers, so it has to file and earned income in India. So the return has to be filed. In case of genuine circumstances, if the return cannot be filed within time, so the Indian agents can file the return within 30 days of the departure of the ship, and the assessment can be completed within 9 months from the end of the financial year which return is filed. Yeah. Mr. Thomas shall require to return file the return of income in India for the journey of its ship before it leaves. Yes, before it leaves, it has to file. But however, as per provision of section 172(3), where assessing officer is satisfied that it is not possible for the master of the ship to furnish the return before the departure of the ship, and if satisfactory arrangements has been made for filing the return and payment of tax by the authorized agent in India, he may permit filing a return within 30 days of the departure of the ships. Section 174(4)A provides a time limit of 9 months for completion of assessment. In such cases, the period of 9 months is reckoned from the end of the financial year in which return was under Section 173 was furnished. So this was a kind of theoretical question. Next question. This is a very interesting question and very important from the exam point of view. X Limited, located with the corporation limits, decided in December 2009 to shift its industrial undertaken to non-urban areas. The company sold some of the assets and acquired new assets in the process of shifting. So, this is a clear case of exemption under Section 54G, in which, in case we are shifting an industrial undertaking to non-urban area, then the exemption under Section 54G will be allowed. These points have to be considered first of all. Furniture exemption will not be given for sure. So we are talking from the question point of view. Furniture exemption for the furniture thing will not be given. In case of depreciable assets, the cost of acquisition will be as per section 50. In case of non-depreciable assets, index cost will be taken, and the maximum amount of exemption that will be given will be the total of the assets purchased, leaving apart furniture amount. So the solution is, with the capital gain arising from the transfer of capital assets being machinery, plant and machinery, land, or any rights in land and building. So the furniture is not included in this definition. So these are the general conditions of section 54G. We are considering that all these exemptions, these are all theoretical, and we are assuming that these are all fulfilled. We directly come to the solution part. Sale proceeds, 8 lakh, building 18 lakh, plant and machinery 16 lakh, furniture 3 lakh. Cost of acquisition of the assets. So for the depreciable assets, we have to see cost as per section. We have to see the depreciated amount as per section 50. So for building is 4, plant and machinery 5, furniture 2. Index cost of acquisition of land. Yes, for it, this is a non-depreciable asset, so the amount will be 4 lakh. Long-term capital gain is 4 lakh. Short-term capital gain, if we reduce the sale cost of acquisition from the sale proceeds, then we get the short-term capital gain also 14, 11, and 1. We have to leave furniture. We have to pay tax on furniture. That is short-term capital gain of 1 lakh. That is separate. And the maximum amount of exemption that can be claimed is 8 lakh plus 18 lakh plus 60. Oh, sorry. Yeah. 8 lakh, 18 lakh, 16 lakh. Plant and machinery. The maximum exemption that can be claimed is the cost of new assets purchased, that is 4 lakh, 7 lakh, and 17 lakh. So the total will be 17 plus 20, 11 plus 28. So the maximum amount that can be claimed as exemption in this section is the cost of new assets purchased. That is with every exemption that we get in section 54, 54I, 54B. The exemption is amount the cost of new asset purchase. That is same in this question also. So this is tax planning. First of all, now we have short-term capital gain 14 lakh, 11 lakh, and long-term capital gain of 4 lakh. First of all, since tax incidence on long-term capital gain is less than the tax incidence on short-term capital gain, first of all, the amount of exemption shall be reduced from short-term capital gain. Like we have 28 lakh exemption to be claimed. First of all, 14 may say we will reduce 14. Now we are left with only 11. Now we are left with 24. 14 is left. 11 we claim exemption from this plant and machinery, and the balance amount left is 3 lakh that we will claim exemption under long-term capital gain. So long-term capital gain of rupees 1 lakh will be paid, and short-term and tax on short-term capital gain of rupees 1 lakh will be paid. Capital gain arising on transfer of furniture is not eligible for the exemption as clearly written in the section 54G. Similar exemption is under section in respect of investment in rupees 2 lakh of furniture in acquiring furniture. The exemption under section 54G is available for rupees 28 lakh, 4 lakh plus 7 lakh, 17 lakh. The exemption should be first claimed for short-term capital gain as the incidence of tax in case of short-term capital gain is more than the long-term capital gain. So if we claim exemption of rupees 4 lakh under the head long-term capital gain, then the tax amount will be more. Like short-term capital gain, we have to pay 30% tax, and in long term, we have to pay 20% tax. So this is smart planning, and this is tax planning, and this is eligible. So first of all, we should allocate the exemption amount to the short-term capital gain, and then the amount should be allocated to the long-term capital gain. Next question. X Limited has transferred units to N to Y Limited by way of slump sale on November 30th, 2019. The summarized balance sheet is so and so and X Limited had 3 units, unit L, M, N, and it is selling N unit. In slump sale, we have to consider that they can be long term or short term. If the sale is after 36 months, it will be long term, and there will be no indexation in that. Only the rate of tax will be as per long term. Other thing, in case of land such as, we have to ignore all the revaluation involved in that. So coming to the solution, slump sale consideration on sale of unit is 880 lakh. Fixed asset is rupees 60 lakh in the year 2000. Revalued rupees 90 lakh. Revaluation has to be ignored as per slump sale consideration. Other fixed asset reflected rupees 460 lakh, which represent written down value of those assets as per book. The written down value of such these assets under section 46 6, 43 6 of the Income Tax Act 1967 is rupees 410 lakh. Obviously, we'll take that this value only, 410 lakh. Ascertain the tax liability which would ascertain arising from some slum sale. Solution. Sale consideration is 880 lakh. Net worth is 770 lakh, which we will calculate. Yeah. And then we have the tax calculation, which is a normal because the sale is after 36 months, because as per question, fixed asset of N was purchased in the 2004, because so it is a long term. The computation is land 60 lakh, because we have to ignore the revaluation. Other assets 390 lakh. Value of the depreciable assets 410 lakh, as stated in the question. As point 3, other fixed assets are rupees 460. The written down value of the assets under section 46(3) is 410 lakh. Unit N is of fixed asset in unit N is of 550 lakh, in which 90 lakh is of land, and we have to subtract that, and we'll take only 60 lakh because revaluation has to be ignored, and the rest value is 460 lakh. But as per Income Tax Act, section 443(6), value is 410 lakh. So this value will be taken, 410 plus 60 lakh plus unit N, this amount 390. Nothing has been mentioned about this, so this value will be taken as it is, plus 390. The value will be 860 lakh less liabilities. Liability is 90 lakh. So net worth is 770 lakh. So by calculation, long term will be, profit is 110 lakh, tax is 22 lakhs plus surcharge plus cess. So the total tax liability be 24 lakh point 4816. Next part. What would be your advice as a tax consultant to make the restructuring plan of the company more tax savvy without changing the amount of sale consideration? Yes, that can be done. We can invest this amount also, or one other tax planning can be that X Limited can acquire shares of Y Limited also. The possible tax planning can be, since transfer is on slum sale, the benefit of indexation is not available. Yeah, it will not in slum sale, tax will be on the total amount. There will be no indexation benefit. So if the transfer of unit N is on item wise, the land would be eligible for indexation benefit. Second, tax planning can be in SSC can avail investment benefit of section 54EE by investing 50 lakh in units of startup mutual fund units. And the most important thing is the X Limited may resort to acquire 100% equity shares of Y Limited, as we discussed earlier, in which case it will become 100% subsidiary, and transfer of capital asset from parent to subsidiary will not be regarded as transfer, subject to the fulfillment of the other conditions. And also this relationship must continue for at least 8 years from the date of transfer. So these can be the possible tax planning. Since unit X is held for more than 36, that will be long-term capital gain as I discussed, but indexation benefit is not available in case of slum sale. Next question. A acquires 10,000 shares of X Limited as on 1/10/2001, limited listed in stock exchange in India and a constituent of BSE 500. The cost of acquisition of the shares is rupees 2 crore 25 lakh. The FMB of the shares on 31/1/2018 is rupees 3,000 per share. This is date, on which the amendment was made that after this there will be 10 a tax of 10% on long-term capital gain of shares listed on stock exchange. He transfers the shares at rupees 5,500 per share on December 31st, 2019. The broker paid what 2,25,000. Security transaction tax was deducted 10%. Examine the tax liability of X. Two tax are for the assessment year 2020. Would your answer be different if instead of selling the shares in market, he privately sells the shares to his son? Yes, the answer will be different for sure. Yeah. Sale consideration is 5 crore 55 lakh or 50 lakh because number of shares, the value of share is 5,500 and the number of shares held is 10,000. 10,000 equity shares sold at rupees this. As on this date, the value of share is 3,000 per share. So it has been brought by amendment that if the shares are sold after 31/3/2018, then that there will be tax liability. And for this, cost of acquisition will be the value of shares as on 31/1/2018. So it was 3,000 less cost of acquisition as per 52 AC. 10,000 into 3,000 is equal to 3 crore. And brokerage paid is 2,25,000. Obviously, that has to be deducted. Long term gain will be 2,47,000, 2 crore 47,000 70, 2 crore 47 lakh 75,000. Tax will be 10% minus 1 lakh because exemption of rupees 1 lakh will be given. Add surcharge 15%. Health says these are the just a calculation things. Tax liability will be 29 lakh 21,230. And also, in case X privately transfers the shares to his son, the transaction is not covered by security transaction tax and section 112A will not apply. The resultant long-term capital gain will be as under. Sale consideration is same, 5 crore 50 lakh. Less brokerage, it has to be deducted. Less indexation cost because it is not sold in the market. It is sold privately to his son. So indexation will be done. Indexation will be the cost of acquisition as on date when it was acquired 2 crore 25 lakh into the indexation rate of the as on present date 289 upon 100. The value is will be 6 crore 50 lakh 25,000. There will be long term capital loss 1 crore 2 lakh 50,000. Tax liability will be nil. The land of Ganesh was acquired by NHAI in year 2012. Since the litigation was going on for enhancement of compensation, the issue was resolved on 11/9/2019 and the court ordered finally to make payment to Ganesh on the enhanced compensation and the following amount of interest on such enhanced compensation. The issue, these were the interests for those particular years. One thing we have to keep in mind, the interest will be taxable in the year in which it is finally received. The issue was resolved in 11/9/2019, so that will be the taxable year only. Irrespective, it belongs to earlier years. We have to see in the year in which it is received. But also, a 50% deduction shall be given of the total interest amount received. As per section 145B, interest received on enhanced compensation shall be taxed under. Notwithstanding anything to contrary contained in section 145, interest received by an assessee on compensation or on enhanced compensation, as the case may be, shall be deemed to be income of the year in which it is received. Further, the last para, that shall be it will be taxed under income from other sources. Further, section 57 provides that under the income chargeable under the head income from other sources shall be computed after making the following deductions. In case income of nature specified in section 56(2)(7)(8), 56(2)(8), a deduction of sum of 50% of such income and no deduction shall be allowed under any clause of this section. So the calculation will be total interest on enhanced compensation is 10,30,000 received in the current year, less deduction of 50%, 5,15,000. So the taxable amount will be 5,15,000. However, As per Gujarat High Court judgment in Movalia, the interest shall be taxable as capital gain in the assessment year 2020, 20 and 21. But as per Income Tax Act, as clearly stated in the section, this amount shall be taxable as other source income. So if you do not write this High Court judgment also, then also your answer will be correct. Thank you.